Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the JOANNE Michaels Show. Co-hosting the show with me tonight is John Hurd, who is interested in the subject matter that I'm going to discuss with my guests. The first guest we have is Michael Stock, who is currently a member of the Woodstock Town Board, but has just been elected to the Ulster County Legislature. He also is the owner of Stock Excavating in Woodstock, and he is a busy person. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you very much for having me.
My next guest will be Brian Donahue, who is the head of Stop the Mining, which is an organization based in Saugerties, New York. And my third guest, last but not least, is Robert Dennison, the head of the Department of Transportation for Poughkeepsie, New York, and he has been involved in designing the traffic circle at exit 19 off the New York State Thruway in Kingston. Thank you for joining me, and Michael, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me again.
I guess one of the big questions that has come to mind, especially since you're not only an excavator but a town board member and going to be a legislator, what can a community specifically do to counteract something like a mining operation which comes to town? I mean, Woodstock is very strict about these kinds of endeavors, so if you were going to tell people in communities out in the Hudson Valley how to organize, what would you tell them to be effective?
Well, to be effective, the first thing they should do is participate in their government actions, such as attending town board meetings, and in particular, in the next situation, I'll be in county legislative meetings. To have your voice heard is to have it done in public, where it is aired, and reporters certainly report on any conflicts or controversy on topics such as that. Knowing your zoning law, knowing the state law which pertains to mining or in any particular application pertaining to zoning law within the township or the county or on a state level. Knowledge is power. This will help you get through the process and have your opinions be recognized based upon information that will support what the law allows.
One of the questions many people, I suppose in Woodstock, thought about when you were running for office is the fact that you own an excavating company and construction. Isn't there a conflict of interest on occasion on certain votes with your business and with the voting that you would have to do in a town board?
Well, the voting to town board is different on applications. Probably what you're referring to as special use permits or site plan reviews, and that's a planning board process, of which I was involved in as well. Prior to being on the town board, I was on the planning board. But you recuse yourself from an application that may affect you directly or indirectly, or if there's an appearance that it may have an effect on your participation. We have an ethics board of which we divulge all information of ties to businesses in the area, as on a state, town, county level as well. And I've never had a problem in the 10 years that I've been in the Woodstock government with any conflicts of interest, because I've recused myself or stayed away from any topics that may have been sensitive.
Well, you're a native Woodstocker, right?
No,
Correct?
I'm not. No,
You're not.
no.
When did you move to Woodstock?
I moved to Woodstock full-time in 1964.
37 years, Michael.
37?
That's good.
It's not
How
a
old are you?
We'll leave that for another conversation.
Yeah, okay, but you know, you've been there a long time.
I've been here. I've actually been coming to Woodstock since 1949.
So your parents?
My parents had a weekend place and then a summer place, and then we did as people do now, spend every weekend in town, and then eventually I saw an opportunity to live here and start a business in 1972.
And where are you from?
I'm from Ridgewood, Queens.
Okay. So, what do you think of the thruway traffic circle, which is an issue that has been...
It's an issue. I think that it has its pros and cons. I traveled the route. Being in the excavation business, I do have tractor trailers. There are difficulty maneuvering through the circle. But the advantage of it being congested as it is, it does slow down traffic, which has always been a problem at that intersection. There's been the problem of accidents related to the amount of speed in the previous circle. I remember when it was a T intersection, when the thruway first opened.
Really?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I recall my father having an accident or being rear-ended at a light before they built the circle itself. It has its drawbacks from, as I indicated, from a tractor trailer where it's called dog tracking, where the rear wheels of the trailer follow a different path than the tractor. The driver has to get his tractor out in one lane, and occasionally, if the driver's not paying attention, the rear wheels are out into the second lane of the circle itself. You know, it's just going to take time for people to get used to which goes where. I know when it immediately opened, there was a tremendous amount of confusion as to which direction to take. But I think in time, especially when the trees mature and the vegetation, the landscaping scheme that they put there reaches its maturity, that it will give more direction and definition to the lanes itself. As to when you're into the lane, you won't see the oncoming lane or the other lanes that will distract you from focusing on the traffic lane you're intended to be in. Could have been a little wider, in my opinion. Could have been, maybe a little earlier in the approaches from some of the ends, and would have separated some of that traffic to have less congestion, or at least the fear of congestion. And that's primarily, the issues that I have with it.
Would you have built it that way?
Well, first of all, I'm not an engineer. I am in the excavation business. I would build it according to the plans. Quite often, on projects that I work on, we find recommendations in the field that we make in my situation, to the contractor or the customer whom we're working for. And if the engineer is involved still in the project, we hash it out and sometimes come up with better resolution to a problem that's there. And some engineers very strongly about their product and their projects, and they have their rationale and their safety factors built into why they want to design it this way. Another thing that controls this is budget. It's a budgetary item. Sometimes they've allocated X number of dollars for this project and they can't deviate from that.
Well, someone told me it was about approximately $3 million spent on this circle.
I'm not familiar with the numbers.
Well, when Mr. Dennison comes on from the DOT, we will find out exactly how much it costs, but it seems that they might have just repaved the circle properly. I know to slow down, you talk about slowing down the traffic, but I saw people come to a dead halt in there constantly, just slamming on the brakes. They were so confused, they just stopped.
Well,
there were a lot of rear-enders from that.
That adds to the confusion, and that adds to the, the safety factor, but at least, the intent was to slow down the traffic, so if there were accidents, I don't know if this was the intent, this is my observation, if there are accidents as a result of someone making contact with another car, it certainly is at a slower pace, and I think that the casualty factor or the injury factor related to that accident will certainly be less than it was before.
So I know there were a lot of rear-end collisions because some of the entry points had yields and some had stop signs.
Correct.
And that seemed to be confusing. People would yield when they should stop and stop when they should yield, and But I guess I'm loath to admit this, John. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I have actually been getting used to it. How about you? Have you found that? No. I'm actually getting used to that traffic thing, whatever it is. I don't call it a circle, but you're saying you don't get. I whiz through there now. I have it all figured out, but.
Well, change is hard to accept in anything, and I think once people realize that it's here to stay, and they'll accept the change, and they'll modify their lives accordingly and get used to the circle itself or the traffic pattern. Whether you'll be happy with it eventually, that's for you to say individually. I think that it's a product that has been built until something else comes up that mandates that we change it. We're going to have to adapt to it.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I'm sort of evolved to it, to have adapting to it, and I've talked to people who have also, they say they don't like it, but then they say that now they understand how to go through it.
Mm-hmm.
My question is why wasn't it just a simpler design?
Well, I think you'll have to ask your next guest
I know.
that.
I mean, that's the eternal question that everybody seems to be wondering. But one of the things I want to ask you, what made you decide to run for Ulster County Legislature?
Well, when I ran for the town of Woodstock, I had the opportunity to serve the public, and public service is something I think that we should give back. Woodstock has been very generous to me in the past, and so has the surrounding towns, Ulster County in particular. And prior to the organization of the districts, I already had made my mind up I was going to run for county legislator to represent Woodstock. Now that they've come up with District 3, which I am elected to, I'll be representing Saugerties, which is a neighboring town of which I also am a taxpayer in. And I've done a tremendous amount of work in Saugerties through the years.
You own property in Saugerties. You live in Woodstock.
I live in Woodstock.
Yeah.
I own property in Saugerties as well. I have a business there. I've also been involved, as you know, in Woodstock 94, which had
The festival.
Festival, a
Woodstock.
tremendous relationship with the people of Saugerties, and hired quite a few of them to work on that particular project. So it gave me an opportunity to represent two of the towns that I have a strong tie to, as well as Ulster, which I do some business in over the years. I enjoy the rewards of politics, and that is of helping people. And I think that my goal would be to try and get more participation in the county level of the government process from the public, as I did in the Woodstock Town Board. As I indicated earlier, it's a good way to get your point across or have your voice heard in the process, and I think it helps everybody at large. It helps the legislators to make decisions, and it also helps the public vent, or to, there's a lot of talent in Ulster County. There's a lot of talent in those surrounding towns that can bring ideas to the table that can help for a better resolution to a problem.
Well, one of the things I think that impressed a lot of people in Woodstock, you ran as a Republican in a very Democratic town, and
Yes.
you're very overwhelmingly popular there. And perhaps because Ulster County is overwhelmingly Republican, the fact that you have such a large constituency of Democrats maybe will help. I know they have a real unbalanced thing there. I think there's 7 Democrats and 20-odd Republicans
Right.
in the legislature.
Well, I believe it's 9 now. And I think, this is, even though it's on a county level, it's still small town politics. And I believe that, my constituents are my constituents, and I look at no party lines when I deal with the public itself. And, I think my record will show in Woodstock, and I'm hoping to accomplish the same on a county level, that I represent the people of Ulster County. And I will be their voice in the legislative body, and hope to accomplish the same rapport with the public as I did with the town of Woodstock.
Well, I know you have an appointment, and I'm going to let you out early.
I appreciate that very
Anyway,
much.
thanks a lot
My
for
pleasure.
joining me.
Thank you. John, pleased to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thanks.
Really, and good luck.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I think, it would be a welcome addition to the legislature.
Well, thank you for your confidence.
Take care now.
Bye now.
My next guest is Robert Dennison, who is the Regional Director for the Hudson Valley Department of Transportation, headquartered in Poughkeepsie. He was good enough to join me today to discuss the engineering of the New York State Thruway traffic circle at exit 19, which is very controversial, Robert.
Well,
A
they
lot
are.
of people have strong opinions about that spot.
Yes. Let me give you a little background. It's a roundabout. It's not a traffic circle. It was a traffic circle. We call this a roundabout.
Okay, I don't want to say on
Okay.
television what
Yeah.
most people
All
call it.
right. Well,
Okay.
I think. Let me get with a roundabout nationwide. This is the first one constructed on the New York State highway system.
I've driven in England and New
There's
England,
lots of them.
New England with
Yes.
roundabouts,
Yes.
but this is different than anything I've ever
Well,
experienced.
this is the. They're also big in Maryland, and they're big in other states in the union. We picked that location for the roundabout because it was the worst accident location in Ulster County. There were more accidents there than any other highway in Ulster County. So we chose that one because we were confident that the roundabout would be an improvement over the traffic circle. The traffic circle was constructed as a temporary measure. They originally intended to make a direct connection between the Thruway and Colonel Chandler Drive, which is the shortest interstate highway in the world. Chandler Drive. It is. And
Is
it's-
that 587?
In fact, it
That's
is.
not-
In fact, it's in the Guinness Book
Why
of
it
World
even has
Records.
a interstate sign on it, I've always wondered.
Well, it was when they built it 30 or 40 years ago.
587?
It's on the interstate system. It was put on there 40 or when they built it.
Really?
And
We should put a toll booth on it.
we could certainly, it wouldn't hurt, right? The Thruway would like that as well.
Well, I mean, then we'd know what it was.
Right. So the roundabout was to replace the circle because the circle was the highest accident location in Ulster County. Nationwide, we've discovered that when we build them, the original impact to the community is about 3 to 1 against it when we build a roundabout.
Right.
Over time, that turns and it gets to the point where it gets better than 3 to 1 in favor. From our perspective, the accident rate on the roundabout now is 70% less than it was before we constructed it. And the personal injury rate on that roundabout is 90% less than it was before we constructed it.
Because people are coming, as I said to Michael
And going
Stock,
slow.
they're
Michael Stock
coming
had- yes,
into it
yes.
and slamming on the brakes. I have
Well,
to tell you,
But the accidents are down. People are
But-
not crashing.
I feel every time I go in there, I'm on,
Right.
I start to
You
shake.
pay attention.
Because-
People are actually driving up to the circle, getting out of their car, and taking the bus.
Didn't you ever see anyone come to a dead stop? They come in
me.
and they slam on the brakes.
Until they used to.
Sure.
And in
And
fact,
that's
let me give you another fact.
In fact, I saw
Right.
more accidents on that circle.
But that's not true.
You
I mean, the
saw
fact
we
of the matter
saw
is
this.
it's not
I saw
the case.
several accidents in the first month. It was open.
First month, we opened it early, and the first month the accident rate dropped by 50%.
compared
We
to
we
where
had
it
we had
was
a big debate about whether we should open it early or not. And we
before the
chose-
summer people came.
Well, no,
The tourists.
before our complete striping and signing, and before it was
Oh,
nice enough.
right,
the
I
way it is
remember.
now. And we chose to do it, and we reduced the accident rate during that month by 50%. So it was the right thing to do. We took a lot of, as you know, took a lot of heat, took a lot of
The
bad
signs
press.
weren't up, so people were totally confused who had never
Right.
been in it.
The accident rate was less. Less people had crashes during that period. So it was the right thing to do. Now, on top of that, today, there's 4% more traffic going through that circle than there was before we constructed it at less delay. So it has been, in our view, certainly statistically, a great success. Now, people and change, Mike Stockton it was absolutely right. People are not good at change. And we've seen that with this circle. It's been not well received. But
say the least.
whenever you change the highway infrastructure, we find, because people have an ownership feeling of it and are very close to it, people don't always react positively at the first instance. But
You
over
did
time-
plant trees, right?
gonna be a
I mean,
very pretty
They did
place.
some trees, and they have walkers can
Yeah.
walk in there
Yeah.
better than they could before.
And the park and ride, which was kind of
Right.
a terrible thing over by the by the caboose,
Right.
is now, if you go by the park and ride, it's almost full every day.
Well, that's a good place to leave your car
Well,
if you're
that's-
meeting
which is why we
someone
constructed
and you want to,
Right.
have you seen that? It's right off 587, you make a little right and there's a parking lot there. So you don't have to leave your car at the
For the-
Travelodge, the Howard
For
Johnson's
the guys that
ride.
work on it.
Right. Now, ultimately, the county is talking about constructing a visitor center there, and they know more about that. And we're going to give them the property to do that if they want to do that.
Oh, that would be interesting.
So-
Okay, but now here's a question
Mhm.
that a friend of mine who's an engineer said, you gotta
Okay.
ask Dennison this,
Okay.
okay? He's from Dutchess.
Okay.
In Dutchess County, the Mid-Hudson Bridge,
Mhm.
it winds around in a crazy manner simply because when they built it, there were so many historic buildings in Poughkeepsie, they had to sort of go around them.
Well,
Now,
yeah.
that's what he was telling me, he's
Right.
a native. So he was said to ask you, and I thought this was reasonable, why, Kingston doesn't have historic buildings that you have like a clear place there. You
Right.
could have done a clover leaf.
Yeah, but we didn't want to do cloverleaf.
But that's
You know,
a simple thing. People
well,
wouldn't have to get used to
Two
it.
reasons. Cloverleaf would be more expensive because they include bridges.
How much did you spend?
We spent about $3 million.
3 million, so I was, yeah.
Right. In the ballpark, somewhat less. It was 2.5,
Mhm.
but about $3 million is
A
not a
clover leaf would have been more?
Would have been more expensive, would have taken more property to do. And we didn't want a high-speed exit. Our intention on the roundabout is to slow people down. And the advisory sign, if you look at the advisory sign, it says 20 miles an hour. That's the speed you should negotiate the roundabout at. And the purpose is to slow people down so that they will not crash and will not become injured. I mean, that is our goal for that project. When you talk about, one of the things that people talk about nowadays is traffic calming.
Calming?
Calming. That's a popular thing you see in the
Calming
papers in
the
Kingston.
traffic. What is
Right.
it?
Slowing people down in urban areas. And roundabouts are one way to accomplish that. And it's a tricky thing to do because slowing people down is a desirable thing in residential areas, but you don't want to make it so that it's dangerous for people who choose not to drive responsibly. People who drive too fast shouldn't be hurt. We should be able to recover from an error. So it's difficult to build a facility that people will negotiate slowly and not make it dangerous for the individuals that choose not to do that. And the roundabout's a perfect example of that. People are uncomfortable going fast through there.
I'm not.
Oh, you should be.
But I gotta tell you
Mhm.
what I do. I get to the left.
Mhm.
Do you do that coming out of Washington Avenue? I get to the left. Everyone's lined up, bumper to bumper on the right lane, because they're afraid to be on the inside lane. I'm not.
Mhm.
So I go on the left, I whiz right past all of them, I get right in, and I get on the inside of the circle. However, the downside of doing that is that people don't get over too far. And you got to be careful you don't get, hit. But I move fast enough so that they slow down, like you say, they're all going so slow. And then I seem to know where I'm going, I just get out of there quick. But the tractor trailers I've seen, like planted in there,
They
why?
need to go slowly.
No, they don't fit.
They need to take both lanes.
Some tractor trailers have gotten stuck in there.
Well, I've never seen a report of one stuck. I do know that they do, those that are not adept at it can track into the center lane, and that's okay. At 20 miles an hour, everybody should be aware, should be, observing your surroundings, and it's okay to go slow around it. It's not. It still will handle the volume of traffic that approaches it, and safely at a low speed. So it's a matter of people just adjusting to the fact that slower is okay. People have a tendency to drive as fast as they feel comfortable driving. That's, you can post a speed limit no matter what the speed limit is. People will go at the speed that they feel comfortable.
This is true.
So the challenge is to make it so that people feel comfortable at a reasonable speed and don't put themselves at risk if they choose to act irresponsibly. So 20 miles an hour, you'll be fine, it'll handle it, and you won't get hit by the truck because you'll be slow enough to be able to make adjustments to your path and keep yourself safe.
Huh.
But you don't like it.
No, I hate it. I think it's an example of total government graft. Contracting and asphalt and sign making, and I think that it's ruthlessly done. I don't think that people have a chance to, what our previous guest was this idea that we all know when town meetings are and we all know what the government's, especially local government, is planning to do next. I've lived in Kingston for 4 years, and I think I've woken up on an average of every 3 weeks to find 15 trees missing on Broadway, a traffic circle totally altered. I love the trees that were in the center of that traffic circle. I love the green that one encountered when one came into Kingston. Kingston is also built on what I would consider an extremely ugly highway sign as the first capital of New York. And when you come into Kingston now, the first thing you see is a compost heap of New York State Thruway Authority gravel and igloo huts and police cars. It looks like, some sort of highway encampment. And that was what was originally there before, and I think it's important to note this, that there was for once in Kingston, there was a tremendous outcry about the destruction of the traffic circle, and what was there was ugly. And then there were improvements made. So I think it's a little facetious to say that the DOT is your organization,
We're
right?
not,
He's not the
don't
throughway.
confuse us
He's
with the
not the
throughway.
throughway.
Well, whoever it is, they're all doing the same thing. I think it was largely because of that outcry that traffic circle was changed and was at least landscaped, or at least the landscaping came later.
Let me correct some misconceptions. The original plans had the landscaping in it. We didn't change it at all.
It's not.
No, we didn't modify it at all.
Don't get me wrong.
So don't
It's not-
mislead. I don't want you to mislead
Anybody
people.
we all in this country get used to a lot of ugly stuff. Okay, like that sign on the way to Albany that tells us what the gas prices are. I mean, that's a lot of money that
Okay,
goes into
don't
these
confuse.
things.
Well, let me
So
back
when
up
you
for a minute.
when you
Don't
argue the
confuse
traffic
don't
circle,
confuse
what are
me with
you?
the
If you
throughway.
say we saved 6 lives,
Mhm.
well, gosh, how can we argue with
Yeah.
that? I mean,
Well,
what are we
we-
going to say?
Yeah, but
Well,
he's just saying
Those
the
are the facts.
throughway.
These are hard facts.
He's just
But-
saying the throughway and the
And
DOT.
don't confuse us with the New York State Thruway. We're not.
The bridge
and
authority.
don't assume. And
It's
the-
an
the
organization
land-
that's
the-
not
It
indigenous.
is not one organization.
It's not an
two.
indigenous organization. It doesn't represent the people that live here.
The Thruway.
Anything that's 9 times out of 10 that happens on the roads and with the trees, with the,
But
with
would
the
we,
constant
I
mutilating
don't-
of the lower branches of trees, that lovely memorial that is there at Washington and Schwank, or Hurley, depending on which way you're going, where the
Yeah.
trees overlook the tomb, I guess it's a tombstone or whatever, that little triangle right there at the light.
It's not a state highway. I'm not
They,
familiar with it.
you know, somebody because they went to, you know, whatever, it's Home Depot that weekend, you know, goes up one side of a tree and down the other, and you don't have a tree anymore longer. You have a broccoli stalk.
Let me help you.
What
Let me
I
help you.
object
Yeah.
to is how the government gained the right to simply come into a community and alter aesthetics, whether you want to call somebody a tree hugger or somebody who just generally likes things the way the
let me
I guess what
landscape
John,
the way it
let me
is.
help
Robert,
clarify
what
some
John
stuff. Let me
is
help-
saying
let me help clarify
also
some
is,
stuff.
you're the Hudson Valley DOT.
Right.
He and I are citizens of the Hudson
Right.
Valley. Let's say we wanted input into how that circle was designed as
Right.
citizens.
Mhm.
Is there a forum
Absolutely.
where our viewers can come and have input? Because
We-
all
right.
we knew was all of a sudden the traffic
Right.
circle was gone and the roundabout was there.
Right.
Nobody had any input. So that's what he's saying.
Every state project has a public element, a public participation element.
See, this
people
is
can
what
choose.
I
Listen,
find
let me finish.
incredibly
Let me
facetious on the
finish.
part of
Let me
government
finish.
people.
And people have an option.
Yeah,
to,
6
at their
people
option.
go,
Let me
and you
finish.
don't know what time it is,
John,
and
let
you
him
get
at least
there.
answer this.
Yeah, but it's the same answer.
It's
that
not the
there's
same
a
answer.
hearing, and you can go to it, and you can express your feelings. But you're taking on billions of dollars of government contract funding and regularly accused of interfering with job opportunities for people that are all walking around in orange vests driving yellow trucks. You know, do you honestly expect me to wake up one morning and say, I'm going to go down to the town planning board meeting and oppose the traffic circle?
You're confusing your governments, and that's
Is
probably
that
where
what-
you're
is that what everybody in this
frustrated.
room is gonna
I
do
understand that
tomorrow?
you're very frustrated, but let me clarify some stuff for you. Anything that happens on the state highway system, we do in a public process. We advertise a lot. We have public hearings, and we listen to the public. Your comments on Broadway.
I don't believe
Well,
it.
I
Did
agree.
anyone
Your
put
comments
input
on
into
Broadway.
that?
Your comments on Broadway.
It's done
Wait,
before
listen
there's
to me,
comments.
listen to me. Let me
Those trees
finish.
were
Let
gone
me
before
finish.
anybody had any
The city
comment.
of Kingston is responsible for Broadway. We're not.
Well, that's just
They have a
passing the
public
buck.
process.
We're talking about this
You have
thing
no.
generally
You have to.
speaking
If you
out.
want to be involved in the creation of public works projects, and
I
the
grew up in
opportunity is
Washington,
there.
D.C.
And if you choose not
There
to
is a traffic
participate, that's
circle
your
where I
decision.
grew up.
Yeah.
That traffic circle was the size.
DuPont Circle.
No,
No.
DuPont Circle is one of them. It's
Yeah.
been there since
Terrible
the beginning of
accident
time.
rate.
And they put 16 traffic lights up.
Yeah.
It's no better.
Right.
It just generates road rage.
Mhm.
Chevy Chase Circle, where I grew up, is a beautiful circle.
Mhm.
It has a fountain in the middle of it. It's stone. It has trees running around it that are at least 50, 70 years old. It doesn't have saplings now that are somebody, it may or may not water and they may or may not grow. This is what I object to, is just the destructiveness to justify some traffic statistics. And it goes on everywhere you go. I mean,
I don't
everywhere you
agree- I
go.
don't
There's
agree
no,
with you.
there's no such thing in this country any longer as a rural road. There has to be a guardrail, an ugly guardrail alongside that road.
Yeah, but
There
insurance
has to be. There's no.
companies,
I
been a
talked to a
lot of-
police officer in Kingston and said, "Why is there? If you're so concerned about traffic safety, why is there no stoplight or stop sign on Wall Street in Maine?" And the police officer I said this to said, "Well, you can't have four-way stops in New York any longer." Time and time again, four-way stop intersections are much more efficient from my sensibility
That's not correct.
than a traffic light.
Okay, that's not correct.
But, you
That's
know,
not
if
a
somebody
correct
doesn't know how to
statement.
drive,
The
crashes
cop
into
is-
another car,
Correct.
all of a sudden, we gotta have a $500,000 red light.
Right. Four-way stop signs are permitted.
Well, I mean, that's what he
well,
told me.
Well, okay, but it's not correct.
Okay.
You know, I guess I would say that you can affect this
I
stuff,
just think in
but you have to
most
do, but you have
cases,
to do
it's
your
taking
background
something
work, and you
beautiful
have to
and
do.
making something ugly.
Well, I don't agree.
And the opportunity that was there with that traffic circle, the way it was, to build on it, to, you know, you could have even relocated some revolutionary building to that circle.
Well,
You
that's-
could have put
No, that-
access to the circle for tourism. You could have generated a really lovely entranceway into the city.
Let me
of
give you
Kingston.
some more. People were traveling
you've got
that. Let me
500
finish.
Let me ask you,
signs.
but
People were
did
traveling
people-
that circle at 50 miles an hour. How would you expect a pedestrian to get to the center without getting killed?
How many people showed up?
You know,
Robert, at the meeting to give input into this circle? Did anyone show up? Are any
County
citizens?
representatives, elected representatives.
They were the only
there.
ones. So did people like John or just
If
average
people choose
citizens
not to
come?
participate,
No, but
there's really
maybe what
nothing
I'm
we can do
saying
about
is
that.
maybe you're putting ads in the back of a classified of a local paper. That's not the way to go.
People have
Maybe-
to be a
maybe
collective
people-
to
We do
participate
extensive
against a
public
collective.
Well,
Correct.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to
Right.
give short shrift to my next guest, who is somebody who organized the community over a mining issue. But we could debate this. I'd love to have you
Right.
come back, and we can continue. But in
Well,
any
there's-
case, it
There's
is.
just no argument. I mean, you
there's, you know.
legitimize everything with traffic statistics.
Anyway,
We're fact-based,
I mean, that's
yeah.
the end of aesthetics, isn't it? I mean,
I don't think so. I think it's going to
There
be
won't be a
much
tree
more-
left
I mean,
standing alongside any
closing,
road in
in closing,
America.
let me wrap up. The trees that were in the circle that we destroyed were not specimen trees. They were not planted intentionally, and they were not attractive, in my view. You differ from that. The trees we planted will be, and it will be a beautiful spot
And it will
as it grows.
be, maybe in the next 20 minutes, some guy will be out there with a chainsaw chopping them up, every branch off of them for 30 feet up.
Not one of my guys.
Well, you need to drive around and take a look at these trees that are alongside our streets and what's being done to, I don't even want to call it the environment, because that invites some kind of, name calling, like I'm a tree hugger or something like that. But to me, it's just there's just some sort of generalized notion that the government has a right to go out and alter the landscape any day, any way, anyhow they want to. And
well, I don't think, Robert doesn't see it that way. Gentlemen, we've got to close, but I have to. I'm sorry. But thanks, Robert, for coming here. Aren't you glad you came? John, thank you. You always have strong opinions like me. My next guest needs to come, and
Okay.
thank you very much. Have a nice trip back to Poughkeepsie, and
Okay, I
thank you
will.
for enlightening all our
I will.
people out there.
Go slowly in the circle.
Yes, go slowly in the circle, folks, and admire the trees.
no hard feelings.
Good night. My last guest this evening is Brian Donahue, who was good enough to come here from Saugerties, where he heads up the community's organization called Stop the Mine. I just wanted to also credit my co-host here for this evening, John Hurd, who motivated me and inspired me to find Mr. Dennison in the great morass of highway people. The Highwayman, I guess. There's that a poem that we all read. But anyway, he was good enough to come here, and I think he explained a lot of things maybe we didn't know, right?
Yeah, I regret getting so worked up. My apologies. He actually took me outside and showed me that he has a natural gas car, and he also owns an electric car, so he put me in my place. I'll keep my mouth shut. The traffic circle.
Well, I hope all of you out there have a little more background now on that traffic, what did he call it? Roundabout. We have to get it right. Brian, thanks for joining us. And one of the, I guess, the issues that we started to get in with Mr. Dennison was community involvement, in an issue. And Michael Stock also spoke to that. Since you're somebody who actually was very involved in this halting the mining sorties, and I don't know if it's completely halted, you'll have to tell us about that. Maybe you can tell my audience how, because we all feel very powerless, like John says. How does all of a sudden you go down to Kingston and the thruway traffic circle is no longer a circle, it's a roundabout. How did this happen? Why weren't we at the meeting? Maybe you can explain simply how you did what you did, because I think it's pretty amazing.
Sure. I think what happens is basically, we live in a participatory democracy, and it only works if we participate in it. And when we don't participate in it, basically everybody who has a vested interest in it, other than ourselves, is going to use their vested interest to affect the results of what's going on. Up in Saugerties, we had a situation where an individual came in and under different names bought up a large parcel of a number of different parcels of property, and then started to mine them illegally. Went in, clear-cut it, filled in the wetlands, and started blasting. Nobody said boo. Luckily, there were some people in the community who were aware of this.
Was it General Electric?
No, it wasn't General Electric. It was just an excavator from down in Westchester County. And, you know, we held a public meeting, and there were about, I don't know, 70 people at the first public meeting. And the individual showed up at the meeting as well and sort of said, no, 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 that's not what's going on. I'm going in there, I'm going to build some upscale housing development. And basically I have to clear the property out, so I'm taking the stone out. And, you know, we're going to build a lake there. Okay, well that sounds interesting, so let's check it out. Let's look at the plans and see exactly what's going on here. So I met with him, and I walked the site with him. And he got a little loose. And we spent 3 hours walking the site. And a 5-year plan turned into a 28-year plan.
Wow.
28-year plans, 50 to 100 trucks a day, running through the center of Saugerties.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Dirt trucks, like big
Big
industrial
stone trucks.
trucks.
Yep. Running through the center of Saugerties. Plus, the plan was to go down at least 100 feet below the water table. I mean, there goes everybody's wells.
Sure.
And nobody said boo to this.
And where's his conscience?
Right. Well, it's down in Westchester County, no doubt, at his bank. But
Not in his neighborhood in
not in his
Westchester,
neighborhood,
you
that's
could
right.
be
You
sure.
could be sure of that. So the question then became, what do we do about this? You know, at first, town had no interest. There's nothing we can do about it. The problem is the state has taken control of mining away from the localities, just like the state has taken control over most everything. And it goes back to what you were saying before. You know, the state came into the traffic circle, cut all those trees down. Now, maybe the traffic circle needed to be redesigned, but did those trees have to be cut down? I mean, that was a beautiful area. I mean, I heard Mr. Dennison say he didn't think those trees were particularly attractive. But, you know, what does that mean?
Grass, trees.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a,
They're all attractive
it's
to
a
me.
sure thing for me.
Right,
Grass,
and if,
trees.
you know, if the traffic circle needed to be redesigned, that's fine. But where was the community in that? Nobody took the community into account in that situation, just as nobody was taking the community into account in this situation. And we were told basically that mining is under the state jurisdiction. It's under the jurisdiction of the DEC, which is the Department of Environmental Conservation, which is sort of a misnomer because people think that, oh, they're there to conserve the environment. Well, that's not what that organization does.
Let's put it this way. I did a little research at the DEC in New Paltz, and I can tell you because when I did several shows on the aerial spraying of those toxic chemicals on the corn,
Dan Hurley.
you almost want to feel that the DEC is on the side of the spraying of the toxic chemicals. That's how outrageous. When I filed a Freedom of Information Act, I was shocked. I thought the DEC was, you know, in our corner here.
Right, as do most people. But the bottom line is the DEC actually has a mandate from the state to encourage mining within New York State. And 98% of the permits that get applied for get approved. Now, you can't tell me that that's being looked at
Why is
very
the
carefully.
state encouraging mining in the state of New York?
Well, obviously, there's money to be made in mining.
But it doesn't
So what
conserve
does the
the
state
environment.
have to do with that?
The DEC.
What does the state... Well, that's a good question. What does the state
Why
have
is
to
the
do with
state
that?
involved in generating an individual entrepreneurial money-making scheme?
Right, well, that is a question that I asked.
Business and government.
And what did you find
I'm
out?
just being naive.
What did
Well,
you
but-
find out when you asked the question?
Did you stop him?
Well, that's a good question. Did we stop him? What we did was we changed town law. And he has an option now. He has to actually go to court now to fight the town. Because the law is the only thing the town has. The town has, it can't regulate mining. According to the state, the town has no right to regulate mining. The only people that can regulate mining is the DEC. But what the town can do is they can regulate land use.
What about the wetlands? Doesn't the Corps of Engineers have
Well-
control over?
Only if somebody, you know, makes a thing out of it. You know, we call the Corps of Engineers. You know, we call the DEC to come in. Yeah, he filled in wetlands. Nothing you can do about it now. And that was the end of that. Trying to get them to pursue that was like pulling teeth. You know, it's not really. They weren't that big. What he did wasn't that bad. You know, to me, the law is the law. You fill in wetlands. You fill in wetlands. It's against the law.
Yeah, and does that have to be approved, or does there have to be an application,
Yep.
a legal application
Before
made?
you do it.
Is there any room for us to think that maybe these judges and lawyers are rubber stamping these deals and getting them a little piece of the action in return for?
You can draw your own conclusion.
Well,
I don't know. I can't say
I'm-
one way or the other.
I'm trying to be as stupid about this as I could possibly be, because this is not what I get up in the morning and think about. And what I got hot about before was this idea that that we're always being told by these people once they get challenged or questioned that we have always had ample opportunity to go and to protest or put forth our feelings or say this and that about it. And I didn't know anything about this.
Right. Well, unless you get up every morning and you turn to the back of the paper and you read the legal notices and that fine
Yeah.
print you see in the back of the paper, you're not going to know what's
Well,
going
I thank
on.
heaven for people like you. I mean,
Okay.
I do. And I'm amazed that for every horror story you hear, there is usually a handful of people that are out there fighting the fight, And it's...
And Brian has
Well,
a business. He
you know.
runs a store called Raising Children. That's how I met him. I went into the store to sell books to you
Right.
in Saugerties on the corner. And it was this new children's bookstore and then also a regular bookstore attached to it for a community. And I thought, gee, this is a nice bookstore. And he happened to be there that day. And we started talking and I told him about this show and he told me in his spare time this is what he was doing, which, I mean, you're probably very busy.
Very busy. But really, it was a community effort. That's the other part of this story. And if you're going to achieve any change, you have to get the community involved. And that's the key to all of this. From that first meeting of 70 people, we did, we assigned tasks of the people that were interested in this issue. Obviously the people that are closest to the mine were the ones that were most interested.
Where in Saugerties was it? What's the address?
Well, there's no address. I mean, the parcel was surrounded by Route 212 and Blue Mountain Road.
Oh, boy, that's very close. That's
Right.
not
Right,
too
and
far from Woodstock.
It's a lovely residential community. It hadn't been mined in nobody could remember it being mined before the turn of the century. And his argument was, this is a historical mine, I have every right to come in here and do this.
What did they mine? What's there to...
Bluestone. Saugerties is sitting on a very rich vein of bluestone, and historically, way back when, the bulk of the economy was made up.
Is there a way to mine the bluestone safely?
Well,
Unobtrusively, I
So
guess.
the-
certainly not in a residential community. I mean, if you think of the fact, number one, running 50 to 100 trucks a day, that in itself,
Through Saugerties, that's
through
terrible.
a one-lane
Two-
road,
Yeah, 2 lane.
the lane that led to 212 is a one-lane road. It just couldn't be done. The second thing you have to think about is water. What's our most precious commodity up here? Water. What happens when you start blasting? You release arsenic, sulfur. You don't know where the crack's going to be. You have no idea what you're doing to the bedrock. People's wells dry up all the time when they do blasting.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize
Yeah. And that was a complaint that came up time and time again in pursuing this issue. We found out there were mines going on all over the county, and that people have been screaming about it and getting no results.
On Route 28, when you leave that traffic circle, just a couple of miles up on the right from Kingston, Mr. Walker,
Mhm.
I understand, owns a big mining
Yeah.
operation across from the Sunoco gas station.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's like a big anthill. You see,
Yeah.
that's mining. What are they getting out of that place? Just dirt?
No, they're getting stone out of that mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know. I see trucks coming in and out.
And who buys that stone? Mr. Dennison at the DOT.
Really?
Yeah.
Small adds up now. See, I was right.
So,
You mean for the highway?
that's right.
That gas-driven car is just a front.
so, I mean, it's too bad he wasn't here. I'd ask him about it. But basically, the DOT is one of the largest,
Sure, and
purchasers
they
of the
pile
stone.
it up at exit 19 when
Right,
you come into
when you
Kingston.
get out of
which
the
is
throughway there.
beautiful. Should put a big, me first flag in it.
But where is this now with you folks? I mean, is Saugerties going to? Is there any possibility this guy's going to mine there?
Well, we don't know. I mean, basically what we did
Really?
was we took, the first thing anybody's got to do when they come into the situation is go to your town hall, your village hall, and buy a copy of your zoning law.
Well, Michael Stock mentioned that.
That's right. You
Yeah.
have to know your zoning law. If you don't know your zoning law, you're lost. So, a bunch of us went through the zoning law piece by piece, and we manipulated it in a way that served the community the way it's supposed to be served. And we found some pieces in there that needed to be changed, and we lobbied local government to change it. The first thing we did was we initiated a petition. And in the town of Saugerties, you get 1,000 people to sign a petition, and we wound up having over 1,500 signatures on the petition. People listen to you after you walk in with 1,500
What's the
names.
population of Saugerties?
I think the total population of the town is somewhere around 17,000.
Wow, so you had that's
You know,
a good amount.
So that's
That's
a
almost
significant amount of
10%.
people.
10% of the community,
Yeah,
just about.
probably just about that.
Mhm.
And that's a big voting block.
Right.
And luckily, this was an election year, so those two things worked well together. And, we got the town board involved and on board. And, they agreed this is not the future. This is not what Saugerties wants to do in the future. Saugerties does not want to become another Appalachia. It's very clear. They had...
Where's the Hudson is the concrete plant? Is
Right.
that a similar?
That's further up.
That's Greene County.
Yeah, that's up in Greene County.
Cementon, it's called. I think
Yeah.
they changed the name of Cementon.
Well, there's one that, they're also paying the power plant in
Catskill.
Athens also.
In
That's
Athens,
another
yeah.
a big issue right now. But it's all this stuff that gets rammed down communities' throats. Before the mine, it was a municipal waste dump that they were trying to put in almost this exact
Right.
location. And what they do is, towns don't have...
The county wanted to
That's
put a
right.
waste dump in Saugerties.
That's right.
They thought Saugerties would be an easy, they never come to Woodstock,
Right.
let me tell you, they know better. But somehow Saugerties was always,
Saugerties is always a target for some
Yeah.
reason or another. And I think that people are learning that the people of Saugerties are not going to put up with it.
well, a lot of people from Woodstock moved there.
Yeah.
Trouble travels. But, what about you have Phillips, that's Phillips
Yep.
Manufacturing. You've had a history of having industry there.
Well, there's an industrial corridor.
Uh-huh.
And, that's the appropriate way to deal with industry. You set up a sector of your town, and this way it doesn't interfere with the residents of people's and people's living their daily lives. You need industry. There's no question about needing industry. Oversight is another thing you need. When industry is in all in one section, it's a lot easier to look
manage
over,
it,
right, and
yeah.
manage than it is if it's all spread out all over town. And I think that's a lesson that Saugerties learned, and a lot of towns have learned that. And that's why they come up with these industrial sectors. And that's what they do in zoning. They zone this sector industrial, and this way you can do this in this property and you can't do it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Well, why do they do it at all? I mean, is there a indigenous right to determine the character of your town amongst the townspeople, or is there?
Well, there certainly should be. Initially, what was a certificate of incorporation? Originally, a certificate of incorporation was, an individual or a company went to a town and said, we'd like to do business in this town. And the town granted them a certificate of incorporation because it brought something to the town. It benefited the town.
and that's being bypassed now?
And that's no longer the way things are done. I mean, you can go
That sounds
incorporate
like-
in
that sounds
Maryland,
like a
by
pretty-
mail.
Pretty smart way to do things.
Right. Well, towns need to empower themselves to take back that power. They gave it up by not participating.
But isn't that what the Republicans say, that the states and the communities and that control should be decentralized and given to local, isn't that
Well,
the
there-
essence
there-
of republicanism?
In a way, and there are pluses and minuses to that system. And, number one being, of course, graft. But who knows better the community than the community? Why should the state be able to come in and cut the trees down at the traffic circle and say that that's okay?
Because they write, in every encounter I've ever had, the catchphrase is, it's not up to code.
Right. It's not up to their code. It's not the community code.
So for example, the bridge, the Rhinecliff Bridge, was not up to code. So the only answer I ever got as to why now the bars are running across the view.
The bars are only 6 inches. I noticed today coming across the bridge. Another 6 inches higher to make you lose your view and be, they have regulations for safety, but not for aesthetics.
Right.
There's no human factor put
No.
into this equation.
That's a
So
good
that-
point.
Yeah.
That's right. There aren't any
There's no-
regulations for aesthetics.
For aesthetics, so
Yeah.
that now when you go across, eye level to a driver who's a regular height, you see like a prison bars, and at night those white ugly things shine in the dark like it's horrible, and it really needed somebody, either an engineer. Some engineers are concerned with aesthetics, I would think. I find But that, I didn't want to ask Mr. Dennison about the bridge because, again, that's the Thruway Bridge Authority. That's another show.
Yeah.
I can find that person. If I found Mr. Dennison, I
Yeah.
can find the other guy who
Well,
did
if
the
he
bridge.
sees this show, he's not
Yeah,
going to
it's
come
like,
on.
But anyway,
But I want to get back to what people can do.
yeah, because that would
And
really be
it's
great.
It's important. One of the first things we did, we were lucky enough to find a web designer who helped us create a website. His name was Ed Doyle.
Oh, I know Ed.
Yeah, and he's a great guy.
Yes,
Does
he's
great
a real
work.
character.
And the website is www.stopthemine.com.
Mm-hmm.
And it has been an incredibly effective tool. I think the last time I looked, we had over 4,300 hits on it.
Really? Oh, that's
And
fabulous.
it's got the whole documentary history of what we've done, so that anybody who's in the same situation we're in, or we were in, can look at this and take a look at what we did to get out of the situation, and how it is the best approach having some outsider come in and start to illegally mine.
But basically, you got out of it because you had a tremendous amount of support. But there are a lot of issues, like with the concrete plant, where there are just as many stop the plant signs as there are support the plant.
Right. Well, the difference there is, of course, that plant is a lot more labor intensive than a mine is. Mining is not particularly labor intensive anymore.
Oh, so it doesn't
So the
put a lot
job
of people to
issue,
work.
you can't, that job card isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
Where the plant is a different thing. So you have the local economy and all those people pushing, saying, we need these jobs. I mean, that's the really only
Mhm.
support that's there.
Yeah, the
Is-
people who are going
right.
to work there. That's
Right.
true.
That's it.
The only thing I've heard about the concrete plant is that the emissions would be totally carcinogenic, that the particles emitted from, into the air would be like, almost like asbestos, somebody made the point. I
Right.
don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I heard.
And unfortunately, people have been put in the position of trading off livelihood for health. And you see it time and time again in community after community.
Well, Hurley,
know.
where Hurley,
Right.
But you got to remember, in all fairness, they didn't know that these chemicals caused cancer 48 years ago when the
No.
farmers arrived on the scene and started using, our friends
Right,
at Dow Chemical
but we
or
know it
whatever.
now.
But now we know it now. The problem is that it's legal to do what they're doing, and it's very difficult to make it illegal.
Mhm.
And that's what I found in doing those shows on the spraying of the corn. So what people were saying, okay, then ground spray, because that's not as toxic to be in the air and being ingested. But these are real problems for instance, Saugerties, as you probably know, has a high cancer rate.
Yeah.
And it seems to have a high cancer rate, I would think, higher than maybe Ulster County entirely does, because they claim the apples and corn, the
Mhm.
pesticides involved in those industries. And Dutchess County has a low cancer rate, okay? So what I guess, in terms of New York State, they brought out the county-by-county statistics. Wouldn't that
Under
be a
much
good...
distress. That
Right,
Was,
which
for
is a-
some reason or other, that was a big
Do
secret.
you know that I'm going to do a whole show
Yeah.
on the cancer county-by-county in New York State, and I think that's a show I would like to travel. But in any case, what I'm interested... one of the big things you could have brought out, I know that mining doesn't necessarily cause cancer, but why couldn't you show the industries that have come there and how the cancer rate has gone up in these? Is there any way you can use that as something that people care about?
Well, I think people care about it, but again, they're pitted against making a livelihood or being healthy.
And
That's
they're usually pitted against one set of statistics is, it's
Right.
been bought and paid for
That's
by
right.
one pro, and then
right. I
Well,
mean,
I'm paid for
in order
by
to make
con.
the fight that we made with the mine, we had to hire a hydrogeologist.
You had to hire?
We had to hire one because who else has that expertise?
But how did you get the money as a
Well,
community to hire?
We had bake sales.
You
we
had
a
fundraising.
We had a walkathon. It was a real community effort, and to the tens and thousands of dollars.
Right.
Got this information together. But without that, we had to
That's
rely upon
terrific news, though.
and who
that
the
you
government
couldn't-
relies upon. The government says, okay, I want you to, in their application, in the mine the mine applicant, he fills in this stuff, and he hands in these reports that he's bought and paid for. And unless there's something to
Mhm.
counter those reports,
Yeah.
that's what the government takes at face value, and says, oh, these reports have been done. The study said there's no harmful effects. Rubber stamp.
Sounds like a job for Jack Klugman. Good Quincy episode or something. Huh? Get that report.
But there is hope. I mean, again, we looked at how do you fight this? Do you fight this on a state level? No, we're not going to win this on a state level. The DEC could care less about it. We focused local level, and we got local politics involved. Local politics. It didn't become a political issue. We got both sides of the fence. There was no issue here. The community did not want this, and we said, look, the town board has to figure out a way to not let this happen. And that's what they did, because the population was outraged that anybody would even consider doing this.
Mhm.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. Amazing.
And of
That
course,
the guy got as far as he did without any opposition, considering what he was doing and the impact it was going to have.
and in filing the FOIA requests, because you have to get
What
all the
requests?
FOIA, they're Freedom of Information Act requests.
Oh, the FOIL.
Yeah, first one we filed at the state. As soon as we found this was happening, I filed one with the DEC. I got a return comment back saying no such file exists.
I got the same comment.
Right. So the second time, I said, okay, this must be a mistake. So I did it again, and this time I put the file number. I happened to have the file number on it. I said, okay, this is the file number. Obviously, folks have made a mistake. Second time I got it back, no such file exists. Okay, at this point, I start calling politicians.
Right, that always helps.
Right. I would say
Who did you call?
40 minutes.
Did Maurice?
Yes, Cahill's office also got involved. And those phone calls. I got a phone call. Oh, Mr. Donahue, I'm so sorry. We found the files. They were in another office.
That's the DEC. I mean, thank you for
Right.
saying that.
That's looking out for us?
Right.
Yeah,
Now the second part to that, the second trick, and you file it from.
that's, okay. Hey, I filed to find out the chemicals being sprayed in 1995. Lie. So I said, then all of a sudden, same thing. All of a sudden, information started coming through.
Materialized, right?
I'm not finished with these
Yeah.
people yet, but that would be a really good show. I want to show, I thought the DEC was our friend, the Department of Environmental Conservation. These people, they very much worked there after they saw my front brain, and that was going to help me.
Right. And that's
So.
what you have to count on, these anonymous phone calls. I'll tell you, one of the first was to the DOT, because I heard that I'll find out about it. The office where I can help you, there's nothing around. You know, I really don't know how I could help you. There's nothing in the files, and there's nothing I can give. I said, okay. Just cross my desk. That night, the guy calls me back from home
Right.
and says, I can't talk in the office. What do you want to know?
And this had to
To do with trafficking issue, and also there was about was almost,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying, like it was already spoken for, and so there was a lot more power behind this than
but
we
it's
originally thought.
good, I'm sorry we're at someone who
Right.
called me
Right.
from home, because there is hope, and, you know, but that's great.
There are a lot of
There's
people
a
sitting
lot of-
behind desks who are in their job because they're making a check and they're not happy about the way things are going.
And hopefully, maybe they could come on my show with a mask or something. But thank you so much,
No,
Brian,
thanks for having me.
coming.
Thank
and,
you,
Yeah, that was great.
It was really interesting.
A
And
happy ending so far.
So far.
yes, and report on. Thank you, everybody, for watching. And don't forget, www.stopthemind.com is the website.
Yep.
And I'll be back.